Yo, what's up, YouTube? This is your boy Jay from Keeping It Real, your arbiter of gaming news and commentary, hitting you off with a studio production video where you know this is your channel, where all gamers' voices are heard. With your boy Jay, always dropping the word. Keeping them other gaming YouTubers like, what you heard? And where you always know, we always keep it all the way real. So what's up, everybody? I just want to thank you all for checking out my studio production video today. And I just want to welcome all of you all who are new to the Keep It Real family. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the comments and the likes and you guys being active. I really appreciate it. So yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and dig into a very interesting video I wanted to do about exclusives, man, and why is the real reason why exclusives are not like they used to be. And wanted to dig into that because I think that's a big topic that's talked about a lot right now, especially in the wake of the Xbox X in regards to exclusives. I don't think it's no secret that Microsoft this year has been its most shorted year of exclusives. As opposed to its previous years, it's been doing great consistently on exclusives. And of course, I have my reasons of why I believe that is. I think it's put very simply. There's a lot of work that went into launching the most powerful console. Obviously, right now, the console, the X is what it is been a lot of work and effort gone into that in regards to their development, in regards to their R&D. So you got to understand that when it comes to resources, a lot of their stock has went into the X itself. And I've been telling guys this for a while now, like, I'm probably going to do a real reason on this one too, when it comes to why they've put their attention towards not really having as many exclusives this year. But that's going to be another video. But yeah, man, I just want to basically dig into the history when it comes to exclusives overall. So yeah, I'm going to start out with history. So first of all, exclusives are revered and respected as what they are is because, back in the olden days, now I don't know how old a lot of you cats are, but I started out with Nintendo. So back in the olden days, especially for companies like Nintendo, exclusives were all there was. You didn't really have the litany of multiplats as what you had now. The market was very non-inclusive, and it was very restricted, and basically we had a gaming industry that was all about exclusives. And I think that's something that a lot of younger gamers they don't really know anything about or don't understand, is that back in those days there was nothing but exclusives. If it was Neo Geo, it was Neo Geo games. If it was back in them days, it was on an arcade, so you didn't even have home consoles. So you would have to take your butt to arcade, which I've done many a times, and play it right there. And that's the only platform you could play it on. There was no such thing as home consoles. Home consoles open up a whole nother market for it being a home console, and you have to worry about going to the arcade. But before that and during that time, back in those days, everything was exclusive to whatever platform that it was on. So we had a market that was basically predominantly exclusives. And that was a very powerful thing for that time, because obviously if you wanted to play those games that was exclusively on whatever platform, well, then you just had to take your butt to that platform. There was no, I can play it on this. It was no such thing as that. So coming from a background of that, obviously exclusives at that point were at their highest, because obviously that was the only way you could get them. So Nintendo was one of those, along with Atari, was one of those companies that revolutionized that and brought that to the home, away from the arcade and into the personal space of a person's home. And that set off a huge big benchmark in gaming and in the gaming industry, where now, shoot, if you want to play the games you could only play at the arcade. Now you could just go in and play it in your own personal home. And that still, of course, at that point, exclusives were extremely strong, because at that point, the exclusive market was still a huge one, because obviously, you could only play games for Nintendo games. You could still play some of the games in the arcade, but for the most part, they were, obviously still, no matter what, it was only on that platform. So exclusives were still extremely strong at that point. And I would say all the way until the first PlayStation and even the first Xbox, at that time in the market, exclusives were extremely strong, because you would have platforms that would literally be built off of their exclusives at that point in time. And multiplats were still at that point in time very far in between, or not even non-existent, because the whole industry was literally being built off of the foundation of exclusives themselves, because you were obviously having platforms that were being introduced, like Xbox. When Xbox was introduced, it had to be introduced built off of exclusive games where you could only get that content there. And that's what literally the console itself was built off. So at that point in time, for that market and that time frame, yes, exclusives were extremely important. And I would say that pretty much took place in that way all the way through to the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 2 era and PlayStation kind of 3 era. But right around within the PlayStation Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 era, that started changing. We started seeing independent studios, Capcom, a lot of these other, even Squaresoft, they started spanning out and and making games for multiple platforms. Of course, PC at that time, even prior to that, had its own market of games that were mainly PC, but PC at that time started spanning off. So we started seeing a shift from independent third-party developers to start spanning out and creating games and developing for games on other platforms that they didn't develop for. And that's when you start to see a shift of multi-plat games. So what I wanted to dig into more and help people to understand is that there, at that turning point, there was a reason of why these games started breaking away from what they would their exclusive, what was them being exclusive before. There was a reason to this, and when you get into that, you'll start to figure out that a lot of this had to do with development costs were getting more and more expensive. Okay, so if you really look into the history of it, you'll find out that obviously for AAA games at that time, and if you were to start moving forward, there's one thing you're going to start to see that increases, and that is the development cost of what it takes to actually develop these especially AAA titles. The development cost started to go through the roof. And a lot of these developers started realizing that, man, if we don't start doing something to remedy our actual cost that we're spending on these games, things is going to get a little out of control. And we're going to either have to cut down production on games or limit the games, or something's going to have to break here or there. And this is what led to there to be more of an impulse to start developing for multiple platforms, because if you really put it into perspective and think about it, the thing is that it takes millions upon millions of dollars, and at this time, of course, the cost started increasing even more to develop these games, and it really came down to the revenue. And so, for instance, if you are developing for a game and it's only on one platform, of course that game coming out that one platform is not going to sell nearly as well as it would if it was on multiple platforms. And that's going to come down to revenue for that game. And a lot of that revenue is the determining factor of rather if that game is going to go on to have a sequel. So you have to understand that this was a big part of it for a lot of these developers, and at that time that was becoming, it was, as games were becoming more and more expensive, it was becoming more and more of a pressure on developers to start developing for multiple platforms. So that's where that came into play. So now you got to understand, now when it comes to the exclusives being more marginalized, you could understand that the fact that now that exclusives are, a lot of these what used to be exclusives are now multiplats, and multiplats starting to actually generate more revenue, well, then you can understand it perpetuates itself. If you look into it, you would see that when it comes to exclusives increasingly started producing less revenue, and multiplats was obviously producing a lot more revenue, and that increased as time went on. And as time went on, multiplats obviously became more powerful in regards to revenue. And you got to understand what that revenue does. That revenue is ensuring not only a sequel, but it's also ensuring a bigger developing budget. So what you were starting to see is that a lot of multiplats were having huge or bigger developing budgets than what exclusives would have, because what that all means that you can hire better talent, you could have bigger studios, and you can have more people working on the game to ensure that the game comes out sooner. So if you start multiplying all of those factors, multiplats were becoming more and more dominant because of these factors, and of course exclusives were becoming less and less dominant, and all of this has all to do with revenue streams. It's just put very simple in layman's terms. Multiplats just have a lot more diverse revenue streams to allow for multiplats to have a bigger development budget, and also have more people working on the games to produce the games faster. And of course, the faster the games get out, the sooner they could be working on another game, and that just perpetuates itself. That meaning multiplats are going to come out more often, and they're going to come out with bigger budgets, meaning that they can be bigger games, they could be more flushed out games, and as you see that perpetuate itself within the gaming market, obviously multiplats are going to become more dominant. So that is pretty much the meat and the potatoes of the real reason of why multiplats are so dominant and exclusives are not necessarily what they used to be. And that's what it all comes down to. Like pretty much everything else, it all comes down to money. And that's the real fact of what it is and why it's pretty much happening like this. Now, of course, there's other smaller factors that are factored into this, but as for the biggest factor and what it comes down to, that's the real reason why. What's interesting is we're seeing this also with a lot of Japanese developers that were prior with PlayStation, and if you really look at the sales in their games, you can see right now a lot of them are really suffering, being only exclusive to Sony, and they're third-party developers. They never really had to do that. They could have just always been multiplats, but you're seeing how a lot of their games are really suffering. So that's why you got games like Nioh and Nier Automata. A lot of these games you most likely will be seeing on Xbox, and it's for the same reason why I'm pointing out right now, is just that they're really looking at their revenue streams and they're really not good just being on the PlayStation platform. And that's why when you see games that stay exclusive, like your Halos and your Uncharted's and games like that, these are first party titles, and those are going to be only the games that are pretty much going to stay insulated from the factors of what multiplats are. But those games are still going to suffer because of that. I mean, yeah, you look at Xbox, it has the most billion-dollar franchises than what Sony has, and this is the reason why those games continue to keep being built, because they're very successful when it comes to numbers. But you look at games like Sunset Overdrive or Recore, you know, a lot of their new IPs that they put out, we may or may not see those games ever again, unfortunately. But if you think about this, if those games were multiplats, oh yeah, for sure, we would be seeing those games again. And that's the difference. That's the monumental difference you have when it comes to multiplats. And that tells you just how powerful multiplats are to bring in revenue, and how disadvantaged exclusives really are. But yeah, this is pretty much the real reason. The interesting thing is, because of this reason, we will be seeing more games that used to just be on PlayStation. We will be seeing them definitely on the X, because the X as a platform, it will be do very well, and we will be seeing a lot of these games like Nier Automata and Nioh. A lot of these games will be coming to the X. It's already in the works. We're already getting a lot of games that would be coming to PlayStation. You know, we're getting them on the X, so that's going to increase more and more as time goes on. So yeah, man, I just want to bust out that real reason. Now, like always, I want you guys to go ahead and hit me up in the comment box. Tell me what you think. Do you think there's a more broader reason? If you do, please hit me up in the comment box and let me know. All right, man. I appreciate if you guys would like, share, subscribe if you dig my content. You guys know I do this for you guys every day. All right, until the next time. This is Jay. I'm always keeping it real, and I'm gone.